From Chris TV, this is Chris 6 News at 5.
This is the last time you will hear my voice when I'm asking you to evacuate. We need everybody to consider evacuating.
One last play from South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley.
Hurricane Matthew is far from over. Thanks so much for joining us. Nearly 500 deaths are now being blamed on Matthew, and that number is expected to rise.
Right now, this deadly storm is threatening the states of Georgia and South Carolina. Our chief meteorologist, Del Nelson, is tracking Matthew for us, and he's here with the very latest.
That's exactly right. The storm has not made landfall in Florida as it paralleled the coast last night and is now 70 miles east of Jacksonville, Florida. You can see that on the radar presentation here. Here is the eye wall, and you can see the strongest storms and winds associated with it are still out in the water. Here's Jacksonville, so it's about to leave Florida behind. Why is this case where the right front quadrant has been out in the water? And which quadrant is the worst? It's the right front, and that is the area that has been in the water, so this storm could have been much worse for Florida than it actually was. As the right front quadrant, here's the path of the storm. This is the area which has been in the ocean the entire time, is the one that has the most impact. And that's the one that we're most concerned about. That's the part that hit Haiti and did so much destruction down there and also into the Bahamas. So here's our tropical satellite. Again, you can see the presentation of the clouds just east of Jacksonville Center, but the cloud canopy goes all the way up into the Carolinas. And I believe this storm will actually be worse in Georgia along the coast and in the Carolinas in particular, South Carolina between Savannah all the way up to Charleston because of the proximity that's going to come to land. It has weakened to 110 miles an hour. It is moving north at 12 miles an hour at the present time. The forecast track takes it along the coast there tonight and tomorrow. And again, it is the southeast coast of South Carolina, the northeast coast of Georgia that is definitely in trouble. So that is the situation there and the very latest track. Let's take a look at what else is going on with this storm because it's still got a long way to go. And again, we're going to talk about one of the key factors with it, of course, which is storm surge, correct?
Absolutely, because you've covered quite a few of these hurricanes over the years, and it really is that storm surge is vitally important, right?
It really catches people, by surprise. It causes a lot of damage, but more importantly, deaths.
It does. It is the #1 cause of deaths in a hurricane is the storm surge. That's why they were so worried about getting people away from the coast. It's the rapidly rising water that happens when the water backs up against the coast by the constant churning of the counterclockwise motion of the storm. Tides have been running anywhere from about 2 to 3 feet above normal in Miami to over 5 to 9 feet above normal as you go northward through the Florida coast. So you can see how devastating it is there. Areas that near the beach that are normally dry are underwater, about 4 feet of water right there. So now we want to turn our attention to national correspondent Sarah Rosario with NBC News reporting from Daytona Beach, Florida.
Hurricane Matthew is lashing Florida, the eye hugging the coastline as it moves north, bringing with it heavy rain, violent winds, and dangerous storm surge that could reach up to 11 feet.
We are very concerned about storm surge, and the worst effects are still likely to come.
This was seen on Ormond Beach as the ocean pushed inland.
Oh my gosh, guys, we should back away.
Yeah, I know.
Hundreds of thousands are without power after Matthew started its assault overnight. First light revealed South Florida was largely spared major damage, while empty streets in Daytona Beach showed Floridians heeded warnings and got out of the way of the violent storm. Now a Category 3 with sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, the storm is far from letting up as it pummels the northern part of Florida before starting its march up the coast.
We're still on the front end of this hurricane. We're not on the back end, so we don't know how bad the damage could end up.
Georgia and South Carolina are now bracing for the impact with landfall near Charleston, a real possibility.
Our barrier islands, it's the biggest concern we have right now is the fact that we need people to move.
More than 300,000 South Carolinians have moved inland. The governor warning those who did not evacuate, time is running out.
At that point, it will start to be too late for anyone to evacuate, so we would still encourage all of you to take shelter somewhere above ground. This is going to hurt.
Millions of people still in the path of the storm as Matthew churns in the Atlantic.
And for now, the current forecast has Charleston in Matthew's crosshairs. Meantime, here in Daytona, we're seeing damage like what you see behind me and flooding in low-lying areas. Reporting in Daytona Beach, Sarah Rosario, NBC News.
And as Sarah just said, as states brace for Hurricane Matthew, people in hard-hit Haiti are cleaning up all the mess that storm left behind. We want to show you an aerial view of that country. It looks like a war-torn country. Matthew damaged buildings and trees. Now, the southwest part of the region was the worst hit. It's still unclear at this point how many people have died as a result of the storm. The unofficial death toll is now over 800. Some areas are still flooded, and until that water starts to subside, that number is not going to be finalized.
And Matthew's impact kicks close to home for many of us here in the Coastal Bend, and that includes our Yvette Garcia, who is our social media content director here at Chris 6 News. Yvette grew up in Florida, and most of her family still lives there. Her social media skills have come in very handy, and she tracks Hurricane Matthew to make sure her family is safe. Yvette says growing up in Florida, most people there have gone through a hurricane once or twice before, so they know how to prepare and have a hurricane plan of action.
If you just panic, it tends to make it worse, and then you can't focus and make sure everybody's safe. So Florida, I think, takes a back seat for that.
And Yvette says having a hurricane action plan and being prepared is very important because you never know how bad the storm could affect your specific area.
Dale, thank you. Relief organizations across the country are ready to help out people impacted by Matthew. The local Red Cross has volunteers on standby. 3 of those volunteers are expected to head out to Florida or other areas of the East Coast. They'll be helping out those people who have been evacuated from their homes and shelters. The local Red Cross, or local Coast Guard, pardon me, tells us they've also got a helicopter and a crew on standby. They may be asked to help in search and rescue efforts in Florida. And Dale will be having another update for us on Matthew a little bit later in this newscast. We also have more on this dangerous storm for you. Just head over to our website, christv.com.
And a little closer to home, this morning we had some rain and it caused a huge mess on I-37. As many as 10 cars and a semi-truck were involved in several crashes along Corn Products Road. Traffic was shut down along the southbound lanes. That's what you saw right there. It took more than an hour for those lanes to reopen. Police say that a combination of wet roads and speed played a role in the crashes. Now, thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt. The student allegedly behind a clown threat against 10 CCISD schools is in jail.
Yeah, that student was in juvenile court. In fact, today, Chris 6 News reporter Jane Caffrey was also there. Jane, what do we know about this student?
Well, Drew, it was a freshman at Ray High School who allegedly made this social media post that led to ramped up security throughout the school district. Today in court, he said it was a prank, but the judge had some pretty stern words for him about that.
Sometimes these pranks aren't funny, okay? You understand the resources that have been wasted, having to investigate this kind of stuff and making sure all the other kids are okay.
The judge ruled that the 14-year-old be detained for 10 days for making terroristic threats. After that, he will have another hearing to determine whether or not he will stay in custody. Authorities found this student by tracking his profile. He had also allegedly been making threats to a young girl. The social media threat posted last week was followed by another clown-related post allegedly made by a Tom Brown middle school student. That post encouraged others to come to the school dressed as clowns and act out violence. Now, that student has been removed from the school and there is a warrant out for his arrest. I'm Jane Caffrey, Chris 6 News. Stephania.
All right, Jane, thank you so much. A man accused of murdering his girlfriend will have to pay a lot of money to get out of jail. Nigel Green pleaded not guilty to charges of murder, aggravated assault, and assault family violence. His bond is set at $915,000. His attorney argued that his bond was too high, but the judge didn't agree. Police say that Green admitted to killing Karina Castellanos, then led them to her remains near Mathis. The 28-year-old was reported missing back on June 30th.
The Hart Library is back open. The library closed on Wednesday after several bed bugs were found on upholstered chairs. The city hired a pest company to get rid of those pesky bugs. The Hart Library is right next to Flower Bluff High School. Well, let's check back with our chief meteorologist, Dale Nelson, for more on what's happening now with Hurricane Matthew.
That's right. Hurricane Matthew is causing travel trouble across much of the country at this hour. Nearly 4,000 flights have been canceled so far, but things are slowly returning to normal. Fort Lauderdale's airport reopened, and after closing for 24 hours. Meanwhile, Miami International Airport has halted all flights, and Orlando International has grounded all commercial flights. Airlines are offering to waive some change fees for some travelers. After the break, I'll have your full forecast, and we'll talk about rain for Friday Night Football, yes or no, and our big cold front that's coming. I'll be back to tell you all about it.